Stop me if you've heard any one of these before. Games are bad for you. You won't get anywhere in life if you play video games. You're a loser if you play games, or gaming is a waste of time. I am sure many of you have heard any one of these and maybe more. So many times have people looked at games as something that takes away from your life. So many times have people looked down on others who like to lose themselves in the vast worlds that games provide without ever trying to understand why we enjoy this medium. And as someone who's hopelessly addicted to games, I feel the need to correct those statements. So if you are someone who already loves games and just wants to hear someone else glaze the hobby you love, if you are someone who is only really interested in one type of game genre and wants to see what the fuss is about when it comes to other genres, or if you are someone who genuinely does not understand the obsession with games and was sent this video by a friend or a family member, welcome! Glad to have you. In this video, I will go over the psychological needs that are satisfied by games, how video games are not simply all fun and games, how they can teach us, and finally, how games can change lives by not only allowing everyone to be part of a community that they feel comfortable with, but also by allowing them to earn a living. But first, why do people even wonder why gaming is so beloved? Why is it so hard to even begin to understand that fact? Well, it is quite simple.
Mein Herr, sprechen the Kaiserreich.
I don't speak German neither.
People understand why other people love books or movies. People can get behind others playing board games, as that is a quote-unquote social activity unlike video games, and as such, they simply cannot get behind video games even though they are at the very least just as much a social activity as board games. If you look at a game with no prior knowledge of how a game works, at first it may just look like a bunch of random bars, explosions, timers, and overall chaos. But then you also notice that whoever is playing is just playing as if they understand everything and aren't overwhelmed at all. Or other times, you may see someone just running around in what seems like a clearing with no clear path forward, and yet they immediately figure out where to go. So, how do people just know things? This is the barrier to entry that makes people not understand video games. Because unlike things like books, movies, and board games, they don't already have any prior knowledge on how things work. Look at a book. How do you interact with it? You read it and imagine what is happening according to the description given in the book. Movies, you watch and interpret the events happening on screen. And as for board games, you simply read the rulebook, figure out how the rules work, and continue to follow them. But video games? They aren't that simple, as contrary to what veteran gamers may believe, you don't just have to learn the special quirks a game has. You have to learn the language of games. Now, what do I mean by language of games? Essentially, games talk to you in their own way. Tutorials, for example, are one way of teaching you how to play a game, but even then a tutorial is more the equivalent of showing you all the letters in a language without any sense of how the words would be read or how the grammar works, as you only get a snippet of how to understand the specific game you're playing. Sure, you can apply some of the things you learn in one game to others, but it is more like learning English and then traveling to France to apply what you have learned. You may get lucky and find a French person that knows any other language other than fucking French, but it will be hard. Seriously though, France, why do you expect every tourist to speak French? It is one of the worst languages in the world. Genuinely, what is wrong with you? And just to elaborate a little further, here's a little story of my own from when I first got into video games. I clearly remember trying out Modern Warfare 3, the one that has a proper story, and I did not understand how you would even turn the camera, because at this point, I had only played the Gundam Versus games, which had a target lock, so I never needed to use the right joystick, and thus I had no idea how to play Modern Warfare 3 properly. Hell, I did not know you could press the joysticks down to run. I was so lost most of the time, looking down every single time I need to press a button for anything, not winning a single gunfight, be it against an enemy in PvP or the single player. I was not having a good time. It took months at least for me to understand that not all ledges could be climbed, where the button inputs were on the controller, how to move, aim and shoot all at the same time, knowing where the game wanted me to go, which actions would work, and that just because a game gives you a certain tool to use in a certain way, does not mean that you cannot use it for other means or in other ways as well. But I didn't just learn these things on my own. I needed people to point some things out to me, because the games themselves assume that you know how to look around, for example. They assume you know that the tutorials are simply building blocks to build upon by using what you're told in other ways. So even the simplest things need to be pointed out to new players, even if it may seem silly. Hence, for example, the bright yellow ledges you see in a lot of games nowadays. Because, as rude as it may sound, new players will rarely apply the things that they are taught if you don't force them to remember those teachings. The Cuphead journalist clip comes to mind. And games need to get better at this, as it is genuinely disorienting for newcomers. Look at Monster Hunter. It explains all of the controls and systems, all of them, in the very beginning. It is one of the biggest hurdles to joining the Monster Hunter franchise, as it is just too much for anyone who's new to the series. And because it makes people feel so overwhelmed, they rarely ask for others to help them. This is a thing that passes the more you play games, but at first it is a genuine issue as they feel disoriented, confused, and wonder why people think this shit is fun. This is also why games get demonized so often, even though they have been proven to have beneficial effects. It is simply because those who demonize games usually don't understand them and thus fear them. The fun usually stems from immersing yourself in the world of the game, which you will have an easier time with if you understand the game's language. Which leads me to the first reason people like to play games.
I've got to get out of here! Calm down! Get a hold of yourself!
Stewardess, please let me handle this.
I've got to get...
People who are critical of games and/or gamers usually see games as escapist hobbies. In this case, the term escapist holds negative connotations. It is said that these people cannot handle real life and simply want to have all the fun and none of the responsibilities. Meaning that gamers simply want to swap real life with a different world where the stresses of life cannot hurt them. To lose themselves in a new world as a new person. And that is not necessarily untrue. Sometimes people just need to be able to let go for a short while and simply be who they wish to be or experience what they wish to experience. Life is hard. A lot of the work you will do will go unrewarded or happens because you must. Other times, something that you may wish to do will just be nipped in the bud due to various reasons. Everything you do always falls under heavy scrutiny. Every choice you make and every choice you don't make is judged and evaluated. But with games, things are different. Your actions are recognized and rewarded, and you can also choose to do those things in any given game. You are never forced to do them no matter what. Another part as to why people seek this escapism is simply to experience something new, to find worlds less drab and one-note than ours, because our lives are ones of routine. We wake up, go to either our jobs or schools, come home, follow our hobbies or something like that, and at times go on holidays to do something else for a while. And while that may all be fine and dandy, don't you wish there was a serious break to the trodden path? That is something that games can provide. Also, I'm gonna be honest here, traveling in this economy? You gotta be crazy, man. You also hear how people lament that they were born too late to explore the world, too early to explore the universe, and instead were born during a time of complete and utter boredom. And for that purpose, games can provide worlds more magical, mysterious, and enrapturing. Worlds which are more colorful and foster creativity and wonder. Or you see people lamenting the fact that we're currently living through a period of time that will appear in history books without a shadow of a doubt, and god do I hate that fact. There is also the inverse though, in which people are happy that they live in this time period for whatever reason they may choose. So whichever version of that saying you subscribe to, there's a way that games can help with both. As you can tell, the reasons why one would like the escapist fantasy are very vast and complex, and obviously has a positive effect on people. Games allow people to satisfy their needs that they would otherwise get from travel, work, or sports, for example, from the comfort of their home and in a space of their choosing. So let's take a closer look at that.
I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better. I am better!
Remember this pyramid? I'm sure you have seen this in school at some point. It is called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know what we will do with it in this video?
Know your fucking place, trash!
We won't be using that today, but it is certainly a good starting point. In a book written by Mr. Scott Rigby called Glued to Games, 3 basic psychological needs are postulated, those being competence, autonomy, and relatedness. Let us begin with competence. Whenever you do something, be it work, study, play a game, or anything else, what do you think will keep you interested in continuing to do what you're doing? Money? Good grades? A rare loot drop? Yeah, all of that definitely plays a role in keeping you going, but those things are as a result of what you have done, not the actual thing you're currently doing. You, for example, won't get a good grade while you're studying. You won't get millions of bucks for simply sitting in a room for 8 hours at your work. Okay, never mind that last part. No, the thing that keeps you going is a challenge. The drive to get good. Because what fun would there be if there was no obstacle to overcome? Sure, a walk in the park is calming and can be nice, but eventually it will get boring. Now add a kid that you are meant to protect, and a random, untrained pitbull to the mix that has an inbuilt GPS to the nearest frontal lobe of a youngling, and you got yourself a challenge. To achieve mastery over a challenge, you will require a very specific thing though, a flow state. The flow state is simply a state of complete focus and immersion into the events happening in front of you. Flow is achieved when a person is challenged in just the right way to keep them engaged, but not too much to make it not fun. As the saying goes, variety is the spice of life. Always being able to handle any problem with no issues at all would leave you in a state of apathy and boredom. And always being too overwhelmed with any given task would leave you with anxiety. Finding that middle ground is difficult in real life. Schools have standardized testing, which for many students can be too much or too little stimulation. The gifted student who later burnt out extremely fast is a story that many of us have heard or can't even relate to. However, once you do manage to persevere and overcome a challenge or realize that this problem is too difficult for you, you will move on and look for the next challenge to attempt to master. And games are incredibly adept at providing a finely tuned challenge for the player. Decades of research, trial and error have gone into allowing players to enter a flow state. That flow is not always achieved in a way you would expect. Take for example, the Rift Breaker. The main challenge here is management. Can you handle the energy strain on your base? Do you need more materials? And is your computer able to not melt down when the bigger enemy waves crash into your base? It is all about managing what you have and accommodating any and all shortcomings that may arise. Fairly obvious if you take a look at the gameplay. Being able to control your base's economy is not easy, as any new building you add will require new materials or more of the ones you already own, and may or may not be running out of. The hostile fauna of the planet will also throw a wrench into your operations in at times irregular intervals. It can be a lot, but it is never unmanageable if you're smart about it. And once you know how to manage your base and the enemy waves well, and you see them crashing against your walls while being picked off in such rapid succession, you just see a bunch of mush on the floor, you just know that you have nothing to fear anymore. Yet then you look at Doom Eternal. One would think the flow state here is gained by just surviving and killing the enemies before they kill you, as there are so many bearing down on you. But to be frank, that is the easy part. The actual flow of Doom Eternal hinges on your speed, recognition, and reaction times. On Ultra Violence, which is its name for the hard mode and its intended difficulty level, you needed to be on point with all three of those. You needed to recognize all different types of enemies charging at you, remember their weaknesses, select the right weapon, and hit their weak points, all while you're being shot at from all sides with reckless abandon. And each time you manage to overcome everything that is thrown at you by the game, you're rewarded for it. Be it an opening in an enemy's defense that allows you to let their insides become their outsides and have a brief moment of calm, or the diminished fighting capability of one of your foes with a satisfying clang sound effect. Games reward your work, no matter what. It could be a hard-earned title to display alongside your name like how it is done in Destiny 2, or something as simple as not getting your kneecaps broken by Tom Nook for not paying him his money back. Competition is obviously also a part of competence. I mean, it's in the fucking word. Facing off against other people and absolutely crushing them will make you feel good. Remember playing Monopoly and absolutely mentally destroying your friends or family so much that they will disown you no matter if they even are physically and legally capable of doing so? That felt good, right? Made you want to do it again, did it not? No? What is wrong with you? Don't you want to be a winner? Well, I guess that's your choice. And speaking of choice...
You hold dominion with your marker and think you can tempt fate to disband this recent fellowship.
Fine, then you'll have detention after school.
What the fuck?
Ever groaned at the fact that you were told what to do? Ever wanted to just say fuck it and break away from your obligations and go do whatever you wanted to do? Ever wanted to commit tax evasion? Well, you can't. But this drive to be independent is inherent to everyone, no matter what life you have led so far. IT companies, for example, have used a special method that allows their employees to choose which tasks they will do, to give them a small amount of agency and thus make them a bit more content with their work. And it genuinely works. I mean, for comparison, look at how students view having to go to school. I doubt you will find a single student who is entirely happy that they have to go there. Because, let's be honest here, no one, and I mean no one, would willingly analyze a 500-plus-year-old poem of their own accord. It is forced upon them, and not having that control of your own actions feels like absolute crap. And this exact reason is why games are yet again so loved, as you not only have the ability to choose which game to play, but even once you have chosen a game, you have the ability to decide how much you want to engage with it. Better yet, if a game has choices that actually do impact the story, that actually matter, it feels great, because you know you helped shape the world of this game. A well-known example of a game where choices matter is, for example, Telltale's The Walking Dead. Sure, there are some predetermined events that will happen, but I mean, they are still telling a story, and the plot needs to progress somehow, and depending on what choices you make, or choose which characters to engage with and when to engage with them, your story can vary wildly from the plot of other players. And hell, if you do want to commit tax evasion, which you shouldn't, there's even a game for that. The desire to be in control is so strong for people that when a game advertises that choices matter but then just don't, or have little to no impact on the game world, the game will not only be mocked, but may even be hated later on. A famous example of this being the ending to the Mass Effect trilogy. Spoilers if you plan on playing the game at this point. You had three options: destroy, take control of, or combine life itself with the big bads of the trilogy. While all these sound like major universe-altering choices, and they are, you could swap out the three resulting cutscenes and barely notice anything changing from a player's perspective. And that's ignoring the plot holes. A more minute thing that takes away from someone's autonomy are bugs and glitches. If these bugs and glitches are negatively impacting your experience, you're essentially losing the ability to do something you wish to do, which is why when a glitch or bug actually adds to the experience in a positive way, people feel like it is a nice surprise of some fortune coming their way. Games also allow you to experiment in many different ways. Be it making use of the aforementioned bugs and glitches to give yourself an advantage, trying a new genre of game, a different difficulty level, what kind of equipment you use, or the ways you go about doing certain things. The indie scene is especially beloved for how innovative their ideas can be. If you have the patience to dig deeper into the indie scene beyond the tons and tons of quirky roguelike games. That is not to say those roguelikes are uninspired. Far from it, in fact. With how many roguelikes exist in the indie scene, you have to genuinely offer something very unique for people to pay attention to your game. And I am sure you have heard of Undertale, right?
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
Relatedness is the need of people to matter, to be able to make a tangible difference. This need to find relationships extends to more than just other humans. You surely know how much people love their pets and see them as part of their families, or how people who work on building their own car from the ground up have a certain attachment to it. Creating relationships is just a thing humans do, as we are social animals. We want to belong. We want to be able to share a connection with others, and that doesn't exclude things and beings in media. In games where we can choose to be kind or to be complete assholes, players tend to choose the options where they are kind and helpful to people. As a result of helping others or just being kind is a more stable and better mental health and less stress than those who choose to not be altruistic but rather to be evil. And games such as Undertale make use of that part of human psychology extremely well. Undertale has two very distinct routes that you can take that show the effects of your behavior in-game. The Mercy route and the other route that I am not sure YouTube will let me say without being smited. So let's just say if you go this route, I won't be mad, just disappointed. This route has you genuinely spend extra time to make sure that no NPC is left alive. You have to make sure that a very specific text prompt appears for you to progress that route by making sure that no hidden random encounter remains. And the game's world makes sure that you feel the impact of your choices. Non-player characters that would usually sell you stuff just run away in fear. Enemies beg for their lives, and the encounters, specifically the boss fights, become so much harder. You not only are presented with the stress that comes with significantly harder fights, but also creepier music that is meant to wear down your mental state. You are meant to feel like the monster you chose to be. Instead, if you choose to show mercy and aid those around you, the characters will be more supportive, and previously purely hostile characters will allow you to get closer to them, and you will feel better simply because helping others and seeing them embrace you as a friend will boost your morale. Think about it, haven't you felt closer to someone after helping them? I'm sure you did. But it doesn't end there. If you decide to instead be an evil bastard and then be a kinder person in a different playthrough in Undertale, it'll show you that having been evil in the past will have lasting effects. I won't spoil what that means, just play it for yourself if you haven't yet. Helping others also allows you to immerse yourself in the world more, as the issues of the characters gives them depth. I still don't know how to pronounce that word. It shows that they have something more going on beyond the plot of the game, and you just happen to show up and just happen to be able to help. And by doing so, you get to explore their issues. Games teach you how to be kind without needing an incentive, hence why people who have issues in social situations are so much more likely to make connections with other people, since they can break away from who they are in real life and let go of the insecurities, even just for a little bit. Just take a moment and observe how connections are made nowadays. Friends made in real life and friends made online barely have any difference for people of this generation. Games allow people from all over the world to connect and befriend each other. But as nice as all that sounds, it is not that simple. To truly get into games and to understand why they are so beloved, you first have to understand how they speak to you. You have to first get into that mindset, and that is not simply done with a snap of a finger. For example, I swapped over to PC gaming entirely in around 2020, and it still took me a while to fully learn the required hand-eye coordination for mouse and keyboard. It is often said that time spent playing games is wasted time. It is said that one could use that time to further oneself in one's own career. But why does every living second need to be spent thinking about work or working? People aren't machines. We need time off to rest and recuperate, to be able to deal with the hardships of everyday life. And it's not just that. Getting into games is hard. There's a reason why most YouTubers who loved games in the past before making video game content their job often don't play games outside of for content purposes after years of making content anymore. It's not just that content creation takes a long time, which it does, I mean look at my channel, but getting into different games is hard work and it takes time, which most people may not realize. There's a reason why a lot of people get into a single genre and then never switch. So saying that time spent learning how to play a game is wasted is a massive disservice to those who dedicated time to do so. Like, just for a second, imagine you're someone who loves to play FIFA and has been playing those games and only those, but then you decide, wait, why am I playing this EA garbage? And you try to swap over to something like Elden Ring. The skill set required to play FIFA is like 99% different than the one required to play Elden Ring. There are worlds between those games, with the only connecting part being the button layout on your controller. Games are work. Take my favorite franchise ever, for example. Monster Hunter is not simply a game you can play for an hour and make a ton of progress. It is an intense 20 to 30 minute long butt-clenchingly tense dance between you and a gigantic animal that just wants you to fuck off. And for those that want to say, I get in there and kill a monster in 10 minutes tops even if I have a bad run, yeah, but to get to that point you probably got a good mixed set of weapons and practice. It was not done immediately with what little gear and experience you had, and let me tell you, Monster Hunter is a menu simulator, more than you may expect. But managing all these different systems is more fun than simply looking at different values as they go up and down depending on what is currently happening. Instead, you're going to go on a quest to fight a beast that poses some sort of threat, and the values you so meticulously made go up and down will have a visual feedback of them activating and will make the fight feel different in some way, shape or form. Your job and games both feel rewarding if you do well in either of them. But in games, your choices feel like they actually matter. Remember the guy who worked for Burger King for 27 years and only got a small bag of what honestly feels like something you would hand out to kids during like a school trip? That is exactly what I'm talking about. Instead, in games, you're given emotional anchors that give you a reason to keep coming back instead of just doing something because you need the money to survive. Your actions are also recognized and rewarded instead of just being ignored for an extreme amount of time. Again, remember, 27 years. You could be firing out of all cylinders or not do anything at all, and both will be met with the same indifference in real life. The immediate reaction a game provides allows us to feel like we aren't actually wasting our time, like we are actually getting somewhere instead of just being someone in a sea of people being lost in the masses. Games allow us to enjoy work that we simply wouldn't be able to enjoy otherwise, as if you were presented with a bunch of Excel sheets or a menu that showed you which skill you were just activating, you would more likely choose the more fun-looking option of those two. Hence why gamification is a thing. It doesn't work as well as companies would hope, but it is a thing. And the fact that gamification exists as a concept speaks volumes. Because that means that companies have understood that games can be powerful tools, which leads me to...
I'll teach the boy. Come, my son, I'll show you the ways of the herd.
Games are an enormous repository of ideas. You name it, there probably is a game for it. That includes games that inspire curiosity. They can be used to teach not just children, but everyone about things they may never have engaged with otherwise. Think Assassin's Creed. While it is clearly a fictional setting, it includes major historical events, and the lore entries you can access are usually real-world history, unless that changed with Assassin's Creed Odyssey? I don't know, I dropped out after Assassin's Creed Origins. Or there was this one game that allowed people online to fold proteins to help find cures to diseases. And this would not be a proper Hawks video if I didn't glaze the absolute crap out of it. I would not have given a singular crap about the anatomy and habitats of animals if it wasn't for this game. The care put into how the monsters interact with their environment by the developers made me go out and buy their art books, which hold an incredible amount of information on the monsters' anatomies. Or look at this video. I never would have looked deeper into why people play and love games if it wasn't for me wanting to know why the sentiment towards AAA games and indie games had changed so drastically. And aside from just learning things once you go out of your way to do so, you also gain a benefit from simply playing games like first-person shooters. That genre of game increases reaction times of the players as well as depth perception and allows them to make out minute differences in just about anything visual a lot better. People who have a lot of experience with controllers even tend to do better with remote-controlled machinery, such as surgical robots, as the micro-adjustments needed during such procedures are not too far off from the micro-adjustments done with a joystick. That is not an excuse to say that gaming will make you a better surgeon. There are vast differences between headshotting someone in a game and trying to save a life. After all, you can 360 no suture a wound. At least I don't think you can. But then there is the one thing that games have managed to do no matter the genre, no matter the time, and no matter what. They have taught people to care.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
I'm not sure when exactly this trend began, but it definitely started in the last decade. The trend I speak of is gamers coming together to help others. Remember when I spoke of the need called relatedness? One of its parts consists of altruism, and has been shown through unbelievable amounts of charities put together by gamers and game companies. Be it high-profile companies such as Bungie with their Bungie Foundation, to content creators such as Jacksepticeye and his Thankmas events, to less high-profile cases such as smaller streamers who held their own charity streams to add onto the donations from big charity events, to in-game events such as Helldivers 2, where the developers forced their player base to choose between a new support weapon to unlock and saving fictional children for no reward, in which players overwhelmingly chose to save the kids, which then led to real-world actions in the form of the developers donating money to charities. And these are just some examples. I have not even scratched the surface with how often people come together to help those less fortunate than they are. There are thousands of charities I have not mentioned, and possibly millions of small creators who I have not mentioned either, which I am genuinely sorry for. But is that not a good problem to have? To have so many people willing to help that it is overwhelming? But charity is not the only thing gaming is for. It is also for allowing everyone to be able to enjoy this medium. Accessibility is not just to make some gameplay options less tedious or easier. Accessibility options are for some people the only actual way to play. Take a look at this. 1.3 billion people are disabled according to the World Health Organization, of which nearly a third are gamers. And I'm sorry if I accidentally offend someone here in this next part. It is not my intention, and it is quite literally the first time I'm talking about this topic in any capacity, so do forgive me if I say something out of line. People with mental disabilities who play video games are often demonized by old media who cannot let go of their preconceived notions that video games are too realistic and thus could inspire those disabled people to commit real-life violence, which could not be further from the truth, as games have a calming effect. They help with problem-solving abilities, they aid in training the brain to process information faster, they help with getting more out of the times when you pay attention, they help with increased creativity, and they can help with social anxiety. Not only that, but focusing on games can aid in easing pain, anxiety, hyperactivity, and lift moods. And those who suffer from physical disabilities and thus cannot go out for social activities a lot no longer have to feel left out. Sure, there can still be a lot of things that can be improved upon, but the possibility to connect with others is there. Furthermore, special controllers have been developed and still are being developed, so those with decreased motor functions can still play. The Joust Plus is one such specialized controller for those who are paralyzed from the neck down. Hell, there are neural implants that have been proven to work that then were used by that person to play video games. And I don't know if you ever thought about it, but wireless headsets are also accessibility options. Normal headsets have a cable that is usually not that long and thus also rarely able to accommodate wheelchairs or those who are bedbound. So something so simple as a headset without a cable can already ensure that someone gets to enjoy their life just a little bit more. To us, it may be an optional thing to pass a passing thought on, but to others it makes a huge difference. So is gaming a waste of time? To answer this, I would like to quote John Lennon: "The time you enjoy wasting is not wasted time." So now that I'm done with my mad ramblings, it's your turn. What are your needs? What do you love about gaming? What are your stories? How did you get into games? Any and all thoughts you have, please put them in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm gonna go play some games now.